So a very warm welcome to all brothers and sisters in the Dhamma from all over the world. It's a delight to welcome you once again to this Dhamma Zoom room. With us here today, wherever you are, morning, evening, or daytime, it is Ajahn Ahimsako, Abbot of Chithurst. So we'd like to now pay respects to Ajahn with 3 respectful bows, please. First bow. Second bow. And third bow. And if it is convenient for you to turn on your video, Ajahn can see you on screen. If not, that's perfectly all right as well. So whenever you're ready, Ajahn, we would like to invite you to please lead us in a short guided meditation.
Yeah, I'll just say again, greetings. Yeah, realizing that I can't say good morning accurately because, yeah, this is, I find one of the most beautiful aspects of coming together to practice Dhamma together like this is the global aspect, this global family of kindness and wisdom and all the rest, all these other beautiful qualities of just people coming together. And so it brings up so much joy to be able to connect with you for this next hour and a half together. And so I hope you're all doing well enough. And so yeah, here it's just gone 9 in the morning, and we're getting some delicious rain after a few months of almost no rain here. And so it's very I'm surrounded by green, and the plants are happy, and I'm happy. So, anyway. So yeah, let's practice meditation together. And so as we know, each and every one of us has a posture or a cluster of postures that support us best as an individual. So please take a couple of minutes to establish, if you haven't done so already, establish a posture. I know for me, I've been having to make adjustments because of changing body, aging body. The cushion seems to be getting a little bit thicker and a little bit higher as the time goes by. I'm getting a bit more fussy about my cushion, as you can see. So, yeah, whatever we're sitting on, whether it's a chair or a bench or a cushion, whether it's a flat mat or whether it's a whole stack of cushions, it doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't matter, because this is not although we're using the body, we're using the physical aspect of our being for meditation, it's about the heart and mind. It's about developing, as we know, developing peaceful heart and mind. And so whatever posture we're in, that's good enough. It's good enough. And so I do suggest that if we are using a chair, unless we have a physical condition that really requires us to lean against the back of the chair, I do usually recommend that we're sitting unsupported if possible. But I know sometimes I've had to sit and actually lean back in a chair because I've needed that physically. So please take care of your body first and foremost, so that it can support practice. Also placing attention on the alignment of our body, and this is not so easy, especially the side view. Although I find it a little bit disconcerting to see my image in the corner of the screen, it's actually quite helpful to check and see if I'm slumping, so it has its benefits. But we can't see our side. And I do emphasize that we should establish a posture which is neither leaning forward nor back. And so trying to imagine in the mind's eye that the ear canal, center of the ear canal, the center of the shoulder socket, and the center of the hip socket are all in a line. So if we had a plumb line hanging a string, those 3 points, ear, shoulder socket, hip socket, would all be in alignment. And then the natural curves in between those 3 points can do their business, because that's important. As we know, the body is not straight when viewed from the side. So just take a few moments to check and see that if we're leaning forward or back, side to side. These preliminary practices are, I feel, very important. We're establishing a posture that is the most supportive for us to practice Dhamma, practice meditation. And as we settle down bodily, we've reduced our movement of the body. The bodily functions can settle, can moderate the breath. Just naturally, we won't need to breathe probably so much, so frequently, but so deeply. So what I offer is a guided meditation. I'm not trying to change. I don't want to change anybody's uh, established practices. As we know, meditation it's very personal, or what we've learned along the path. So really, ultimately, it's up to us to use what works. So whatever I do offer, I just offer as just sharing what works for me, what I've been using for a long time and currently using. And so, but yeah, just really make sure we support ourselves by doing what works. So I won't offer too much instruction, because I believe that everybody has at least some experience. So the breath meditation is probably the most well-known meditation technique, focus, for lack of a better word. And there's a good reason. Really can provide us with a calming vibration in the body. Bodily functions, as I said, they slow down. Like a pool of water that's been rippled by the wind. Maybe a duck landed on it, disturbed the water, or somebody threw a rock in it, so the surface of the water is disturbed and you can't really see inside the water so clearly. And so too, when we're removing unnecessary agitation to the body, disturbance to the bodily functions, things settle down, a little bit like the surface of the water. The mind, even if it just a little bit slows down, just a little settling, emotions settling. distractions being diminished. We can see more clearly what's going on inside. So settling and seeing. Settling. Seeing. So for the next several minutes, if we're used to using the breath as our object of meditation, encourage that, using that as our object of gentle attention. Just gentle attention. And that way we can hopefully notice when our attention gets pulled elsewhere. We get pulled into thinking, that we notice that. And whether that's after a few minutes or immediately, or just as soon as we notice, we just gently return to the breath and the body, sensing the breath. Emotion, some sort of strong emotion lands strong enough for us to notice. Same thing, we notice it, we recognize it, and then just gently, ever so gently return to the breath, to the body. Settling and seeing thoughts and emotions, physical sensations. So practice like this. We're using the body, the breath, help give us a perspective on the mind and heart, thinking and feeling, emotions. Not trying to kill emotions, not make an enemy out of thinking. We're going to get a perspective, reflective perspective on thinking and emotions. Settling and seeing, sensing. we'll be changing focus of our time together today, ending this meditation. Ready? If you've had your eyes closed, most of us have. Just eyes, we adjust our senses. Feel free to move the body. I don't have a bell, so try. Ding.
Thank you so much, Tanajan. We will now proceed to the next session of requested Dhamma talk. But before we do that, Tanajan, maybe if you could just speak a bit louder, then we could hear you, because you're getting softer and softer. I was quite hard to hear you.
Settling, but not seeing that I was too softly.
Yeah.
What I might do also is just turn up the sensitivity of my mic.
Yes, okay. Yeah, we can hear you better now. Okay.
I'll speak more. Also, because it'll be more Dhamma talk and Q&A, I tend to speak more loudly.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. So now we'd like to request for the Dhamma. Cheryl will help us to request the Dhamma, please, Cheryl.
Yes. Ramajaloka Dipati Sahampati Katanjalian Divarang Ayajata Santi Dasata Parajakajadika Dese Tutamang Anukam Pimang Pajam.
For respects to the Buddha, excuse me. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. While we were meditating, because I have my screen set up on gallery view so I can see as many of you as possible, so that I can connect. And while we were meditating, I opened my eyes, and it was just this lovely thought came up: is that, like all the years in my life where if I was sitting looking at a screen, I wanted to see excitement and movement, maybe a movie or TV or something moving, and it was just so beautiful. It's just all these human beings just sitting like so peaceful. Just interesting thought came up. So thank you. It's just that on this planet, and we're just this little slice of people doing this right now around the planet, there are peaceful things going on. I know that's hard, when we look at maybe scroll through the news app on our phone, or see something or listen to the news or something. It can be really pretty hard to bear, but things like this are happening right now around the world. So there is goodness. So I just thought I'd mention that. So suffering and the end of suffering. As I think as we're all aware, the Buddha famously said, "I teach two things: suffering and the end of suffering." And so obviously there's a lot in between there. It is simple on that level. And so, and I for myself, I try to keep my own Dhamma practice as simple as possible. And that's been the encouragements of the teachers that are closest to me. And so that really emphasizing simplicity. And so hopefully I'll speak in ways today that are simple. And one of the things I've been reflecting on a lot lately, and I do apologize if, and I don't even know whether it's up on our website here, but I did give a talk about 10 days ago, maybe a week ago, and this is going to be sort of the same topic, but so if you've heard that other one, I'm sorry. So, but yeah, I've really been reflecting on the thought or the concept that we suffer because we think, because of thinking. So I think we probably all heard that, maybe even numerous times. Suffer because of thinking. Of course, we feel pain. Pain is in the body, and he was a fully enlightened Buddha, felt pain. I mean, he wasn't beyond physical pain, and he wasn't beyond emotion. From what we can see from the suttas, he wasn't emotionless. So like the example that Lepor Sujita was using the other day, because I'd invited him to give Dhamma talks every day during our week of group retreat that we just finished, and also like the Buddha, the description of him, leaving Vesali, was the city of Vesali. The Buddha is nearing the end of his life, and he turns around and says, "Behold," or something similar. This beautiful city, and this is probably the last time I see this beautiful place. So recognizing that was a positive emotion in him. Or when he says, "Oh, this assembly feels empty," without, his two great disciples had passed away quite recently, and the assembly feels empty without them. Now, that's a bit bare bones, but he felt what we're handed down. So it's not about Dhamma practice the way I understand it and the way I practice it. It's not about becoming emotional and intellectual flatliners, just absolutely numb and unfeeling, unthinking. And a phrase I use quite a lot is to not make an enemy out of thinking, to not make an enemy out of emotions. Because if we do, then it's just, what is that? A life of suppression, repression? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but we're sense beings. We're human beings. We've got these six senses, and as the Buddha said, with the six senses, the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and intellect, where there is contact, in other words, when we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, think something, there is a feeling. He didn't say you might feel something. He said where there's contact, there is feeling. But that feeling can be relatively neutral, because the three feeling tones, which is probably a better phrase, are painful, pleasurable, or neutral. It's phrased neither painful nor pleasurable. So there's still contact, and so much of our life when we investigate is in that neutral zone. What stands out are the positive and negative, more for obvious reasons. So going back to thinking, we suffer because we think. So I was sharing this. I was leading a retreat up at Amaravati a couple of weeks ago, and I was kind of riffing on this, doing a Q&A. And it was interesting because at the end of the retreat, a retreat, and I won't say who it was, shared with me that they about 4 or 5 years ago had a temporary. They had a stroke, but it was a very temporary, only 3 hours of a very particular type of stroke. And for those 3 hours, no thoughts formed in their mind. They couldn't form any thoughts. Nothing. And so they shared with me, and what was really interesting. And I said, well, what was that like as an experience? Like, were you like, was that disturbing, or was that? And they said, no, it was incredibly peaceful. They said, because I couldn't form any thoughts of the future. There was no worry. There was no panic. They only started panicking when their thinking came back after 3 hours. That was when they started suffering, was when the thinking came back. But they said for those 3 hours, they could see that they were in a hospital. They kind of knew intuitively, and they could recognize family members, but there was no thinking. There was absolutely no thought like, what's going to happen to me? And this is a young person. They were probably in their 30s when it happened. So, hopefully a long life ahead. And so there was no thoughts of, well, what's going to go on? What's this doctor doing? And am I going to be like this forever? Or am I ever going to heal? Nothing, no panic, no suffering. just a bright, peaceful state of being. Now, does that mean that we should all aim to somehow get that part of our brain shut down? No. So it's not about us. I'm pointing this out just as an experience because I thought it was interesting. But it's not about getting rid of thinking. It's not about having to control thoughts so much that we don't ever think anything unwanted. But my understanding, it's the relationship to thinking. It's our relationship to emotions. So do we want to make it so we don't feel sad when something sad happens? If that's it, I don't know. If anything, I want to be able to feel, to be able to, when something lands, which is joyful, nice, sweet. When something, somebody, near us, or if something happens sad, I don't want to not feel. I want to really develop, really open to this human project, this human experience. That we are all privileged to have the opportunity to, because we came across spiritual teachings in this form. And so it's the relationship with thoughts and feelings, emotions. So how to receive, there's sense contact. So the contact of thinking would be the intellect. That's the intellect. And so I would suggest that emotions fall into that same sense base. Like, I don't think my hand feels emotions. It's on my body. I think my eyeball, they don't feel. But I see something, and then it goes in, and then that's when it triggers off through perception. Like I perceive, all right, if I perceive something that, oh, that's what I've learned is sad. Over my life, I've learned that when I see that or hear about that, that is sad. So it's that memory, so perception, memory, remembering, right? That the sankharas of thoughts and emotions will either arise or not arise. And so, yeah, the thinking. So if I've made an enemy out of thinking, if I've made an enemy out of emotions, then right there, that's a really fertile ground for suffering. That's really, I know, because I've done it. And I still do it. But I'm getting better, a little bit better at not doing it. There has been some progress. So. But it's that, being able to receive spaciously, give space, discernment, right? It's really, really important to be able to also, to be able to label things is also like labeling is what would be perception, sanya in the Pali language. So it's the label. The word sanya, so in the English language, it directly relates to the word sign, how we label things, what it is. And so that's why I find it very interesting when something arises, but you just can't label it. You might hear something here through any of the sense bases. It's just like we're nonplussed. It's just like the mind goes quiet because we can't label it. But it's discerning. Okay. Also discerning whether something is wholesome and unwholesome. So one of my least favorite phrases in the English language, which I guess is still used, it's all good. And people go, maybe there's something wrong. Oh, it's all good. It's all good. Well, is it? Is it all good? Not the way I see it. And so to be able to really discern, and by developing our discernment powers to discern as quick as possible, because that really informs our response to something. So especially discerning between wholesome and unwholesome. So if wholesome thoughts are coming up, yeah, if it's the right time to be pondering those things, developing those things, using those things, great. We can nourish wholesomeness. If unwholesome thoughts or emotions are coming up, we don't need to kill them, but we can gently turn away. We can gently ignore those. And so it's like I'm staring out this way. I'm looking out into my garden, and it's not highly cultivated at all because it's a fairly new kuti here. And but the plants. Like, for instance, somebody planted new grass seed out here. I've been watering the grass, but I haven't been watering the stinging nettle that's next to it. The stinging nettle hurts. And so I'm watering the grass. So we nourish and nurture that which is wanted and wholesome and helpful. And we can just typically gently just leave aside that which is unwholesome, unwanted, unhelpful. However, there are some times that we have to take more assertive practices, maybe, where it's really, we maybe have to put more effort to really just at least temporarily cut it off, especially if we're about to do something, respond in a way that would be very painful for ourselves or others, harmful. But going back to thinking, so it's like, that using the practices of just noticing. So that's why I kept repeating this phrase, settling and seeing, when we were doing our guided meditation. And just and it doesn't mean that everything has to settle before we start to see more clearly. So going back to the analogy of the pond, is that because like once a year, the small pond that we have here at Chithurst in the cloister garden, it needs to be because these amazing plants are growing in the water. They're beautiful, and there's all sorts of things, dragonflies and all this stuff using it. But it gets too much, and it has to be in the autumn. It has to be pulled back and cut back by the lay people here. And but to do that, they have to be in the water. They got their muck boots on and waders, and the water gets really muddy and all stirred up, and then it usually takes about 3 days before the water, before the silt settles completely. So, but it's only even after the first day you can see more clearly. I can start to see the larger objects that are in the water. So this is the way I like in our meditations, because sometimes I feel like, I know from my own experience, I was just so greedy to get rid of all thinking, to get rid of all feeling, and just make the mind completely still and quiet. And for 45 minutes, then the bell would ring, and then that would be it. Then I could come out. Well, I mean, some people can do that. And It wasn't really my experience, and I meet a lot of people also who share it. And so I was greedy for the absolute instead of us just using, whether we're using breath or using mantra recitation and quietly, silently in the mind, or whatever object of meditation we're using, just that gentle settling. The word samatha, that Pali word, which is often translated as either calming or tranquilizing meditation, samatha is also, I've seen, translated as settling. Just allowing, instead of pushing, forcing, we're putting in the ingredients, we're using the tools as ingredients and causes and conditions to allow the mind and the heart to settle. And so, as I said, even just a little bit of settling, the more it settles, the more things will stand out. Right? I see more now, like before I took up meditation 30 years ago, I wasn't seeing any of my defilements because I wasn't looking, and also I wasn't giving any opportunity. Then you take up meditation going, well, I'm seeing things that I didn't see before. Well, yeah, because you didn't give any opportunity. Or sometimes even seasoned practitioners are saying, well, I've been practicing 30 years and I'm seeing stuff, I'm not crazy about seeing it. Well, isn't it great that we're seeing it? Marvelous. It's like if you don't see the dry rot in a building, the wood rotting, inside the wall, if you don't see it, and then all of a sudden your wall falls down because you didn't know it was there. So, you could come in and say, no, this house is great. It's all perfectly sound and everything, and then have the wall fall down because you didn't know. And so that's maybe a little bit of a strong analogy, but by seeing the things that are the obstructions, the obstacles to our well-being. Meditation is a tool, it's not the goal. These are our beautiful tools. It's interesting because I like to hear at the community, I like to chant the Noble Eightfold Path chant. It's in our chanting book. And it's in the Pali and English, line by line. And I like that because it's the key teaching. The Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path. But I'd like to point out to myself and others that that meditation is only a couple of the spokes of the Eightfolds. There's all these other. It's a holistic. The Buddha's teachings, I like to think of them as holistic teachings, in the sense that it's just all encompassing. It's guiding us, giving us encouragements with our life, but also to give us those tools. It's a big toolbox, but it's not. It doesn't need to be complicated. We have that meditation is crucial. I'm not trying to downplay it at all, but just it's remembering. And once again, I'm intentionally repeating. It's a tool. So the goal is to not be adept at just being able to stop the mind thinking. What happens when we start thinking? Human beings, we have this amazing gift of having an intellect. And through wholesome use of it, amazing. It's amazing what we can do with our life. Even using it not in a complicated way. We don't have to become, develop hyperintelligence or become super educated, but just to be able to direct the mind in wholesome ways. So although I shared a story of a person experiencing no thinking for 3 hours, that's not the goal. So the Buddha thought, from what's recorded, he was engaging a lot of the time. Even if the what's recorded is even partially accurate, which I believe it is. But he was very engaged, using the mind, talking, sharing, teaching, listening, All of his six senses were engaged. And he tried the sort of ascetic, he did the ascetic practices, as you know. I think it was for about 6 years, if I remember right. And he found the middle way. Found that middle way of neither too tight nor too loose. And so engagement, and his students, his disciples were, you read sometimes in solitude, a lot of times, practicing in quite large groups. When you read the descriptions of people living together, the Sangha, living in quite large communities sometimes, or traveling, doing walking tours, large groups. But then he said, after your meal, go find a quiet place, go find the root of a tree, an empty hut, someplace quiet to then settling and seeing. Those are my words, but go and meditate. All these reflective teachings, out of all the teachings that are recorded, very few of them are meditation instruction. Most of them are reflective Dhamma teachings. Offering tools through words to reflect on our human experience, to be able to kind of organize where our lens of Dhamma, our Dhamma lens, if we're working on a particular aspect of Dhamma, reflecting on a particular aspect of Dhamma. So even like, reading description, we're using, like applied and sustained thought. We talked of vichara in the Pali. Now I'm still, because I've been reflecting on this a lot the last year or so, and you read somebody else's description of it, or you talk to somebody else and they give a different answer. And so I'm still, but it's okay, applied. So could be just applying that thought of the breath. Sometimes people use that. You bring that up, you raise that into consciousness as they're in the mind. Okay, the breath. That's one description, one way of using it. And you sustain that, applied and sustained. Or using a reflective teaching, bringing something into the mind. But the mind, the intellect is engaged. There is, but it's that, when we get lost in thought. So it's the other thing, the way I've been speaking about it lately is it's the story where we're really suffering. So there might be a painful thought that comes up, and it's part of our life experience. And instead of, that lovely practice that our dear teacher Lumpur Sumedho used of, it's like this, of just recognizing, okay, sadness is like this, full stop, I'm adding that bit. But then when I add the story, I put a colon, and then I do a run-on sentence. Wow, you've been practicing 32 years, you shouldn't really be affected by sadness this much anymore, full stop. And then, how can I, full stop, okay, hard return, new paragraph. When am I ever going to you get into the story, or if we're starting to blame somebody else or blame ourselves, we get into the story. And does that mean we never have a story? No, I'm not saying that. There is appropriate, but it's when we get lost in the story instead of being able to be with that. This is really a sweet moment. Like that sweet moment when I opened my eyes and saw all of you just peaceful. By the way, you still look peaceful, but we're just a little bit more engaged right now. So just thought to add that. So yeah, that was a sweet moment. But do I need to get into a story? Like, that we grab the sweet moments and think, well, okay, next year is Buddha going to invite me, so I get to have a sweet moment with the BuddhaDhamma 5 streams and whatever, Or do I have to be sharing the Dhamma just so I can be joyful? That would be wrong of me. It's like, can I just, oh, sweet. Full stop. Period. Point. Through meditation, through mindfulness, developing the path, we learn how to spot that entry into stories which are unhelpful. So again, it's developing the tools of mindfulness, meditation, stillness, whatever words we want to use. If we're, there's a sort of absorbing into this, whatever. These are really important practices. And so then the more and more subtle those movements of mind, movements of heart that lead to suffering. It's like clinging, and the story tends to, falling into that, grabbing the story, getting lost in the story. I mean, how many times have we maybe been meditating and then the bell does ring and you're like, wow, where was I? When did I start walking through India as I'm sitting in England? How many minutes ago was that? But don't lose heart when that happens. Don't lose heart. But even there to go, oh, wow, and to watch what that feeling tone arises from that realization. Plow it all back into our practice, so we can literally, like that lovely, I never met Luang Por Chah, but he was saying, everything is teaching us. So even if we've gone 3 days of a retreat and been kind of lost, just that, oh, and then that realization, oh, and just to notice that, oh, right. And then not compound it through more complication, through more story, but to go, oh, well, this is what that feels like, but I can learn from this. To learn from everything and never feel like that it has been a waste of time. Really, really important, because otherwise we can convince ourselves into some sort of downhearted or failure, a failed meditator, or feel like we're never doing enough. Right? That's when do we ever? I mean, I meet a lot of people, and so like, do we ever feel like we've meditated enough? Maybe some of us do, or that it's our mind settled enough, or maybe it was really settled, but there must be more. I'll go deeper next time. Maybe, yeah. But it's that when we're feeling that, if it's a feeling of lack, a feeling of, as I said a minute ago, maybe failure or just not good enoughness in our Dhamma practice, instead of really just keep applying, keep opening, noticing, is there suffering? Is there no suffering? And that's why it's so crucial, these Four Noble Truths, these perfect teachings, to really know. And that's why it says suffering should be understood from a visceral level. To really know what that stress, discontent, dis-ease, pain, whatever words we're using, and I find using all of them very helpful. When there's suffering. So no, certainly my first few years of practice, I was like, no suffering. I just didn't see it because I wasn't tuned in. I wasn't noticing the suffering. And then all of a sudden I realized, I knew when something was upsetting, but I didn't see that as suffering. I thought, well, no, that's just upsetting. And that's true in some ways. Just being upset doesn't mean we're suffering. That's the thing. So just being sad doesn't mean we have to suffer. Just experiencing raw irritation, aversion, that doesn't have to go into suffering. So that phrase, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. it's an interesting. It's a very simple phrase and very maybe even overused, but for a good reason, because can we be with experiences that are painful? But then on the flip side, is it learning how to be with that which is absolutely desirable and beautiful and pleasant and all the positive spectrum of the experience? Can we be without that without suffering? Without clinging to it, without grabbing it, without feeling we have to have it. That's where the translation of dukkha, that other absolutely crucial aspect of it is just unsatisfactoriness. Even getting everything we want, is it ultimately satisfying? Or if it is, then we can never experience it again and go absolutely cool. We can be cool with that. So, but yeah, just to kind of wrap up, just reflecting on especially going back to what I was talking about thinking. Really encourage all of us to not make an enemy, not to just kill thinking, but to understand the causality, conditionality of thinking. This is a question also I've been asking. Sorry. If there was no language, okay, no Chinese, no English, no, there's people all over the world, Russian, no languages, right? Whatsoever. Human beings had no language. Would there be thinking? I don't really know the answer, but for sure, but we think in thoughts. We can perceive, of course we see, but if there were absolutely no language, how could I think the way I'm talking about thinking, that getting lost in the story? There would be no story. And that's I think what triggered that person coming to me after the retreat a couple of weeks ago and sharing their experience, is that although they could still speak, they were still able to speak. So yeah, if there was no language, we couldn't think. So what would we do with pain? Usually, like when I'm experiencing pain, especially because on and off I have sort of hip and back trouble, lower back, and often, is this it? Am I ever going to get over this? It's the story of the worry. That worry is thinking. So if we couldn't think and we couldn't worry, to just be with what's painful, be joy, maybe with laughing, and something would bring joy to us. And so, and once again, and this is the third or fourth time I've said this, it's not about getting rid of, just getting our brain, get some sort of brain surgery so we can never think or speak or think or use language again. No, it's not it. But just to really, you see the conditionality of thinking through our culture, through what age we are, what era we grew up in, what country, what socioeconomic part of society we were in, how we chose our education, what we decided to do if we went into higher education, what countries and places we decided to move, friends. That all conditions how we our worldview, and therefore our thinking. And so it's conditioned. It's a conditioned, hugely huge part of our life. And to get a perspective on it, and to not believe in the things that are useless and not real. And sure, it doesn't mean that we don't have that thinking isn't real, but with a small r, it's all created. It's all conditioned, it's all created, it's all based on, I just gave a small list of the conditionality of it. But to learn how to use thinking skillfully, to leave aside that which is unskillful, not get lost in stories, take things as a relative truth, and the things that are relatively true. I'm not talking about whether killing is right or wrong, because within our tradition, Buddhist is that all killing is wrong. So it's not trying to get into an intellectual debates about things which are those base ethics. But in other things, just take things as they come. Use the intellect skillfully. Hopefully, we can learn to not suffer over what we think or feel. So I've said an awful lot, and so I, as always, as all of our dear elders who share, just offer this as a reflection, and something's useful, good. And if it's not so useful for you, you can just gently leave that one aside as well. So I'll do.
Antamayang Dhammakataya Sadhu Karang Tatamase Sadhu 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 Anumodami.
Thank you so much, Tanajan. That was a very beautiful reflection. So I'd like to now open the floor for questions and answers. Anyone who's got a question or a comment, please feel free to click on the raise hand button, and we'll invite you to unmute. So whilst waiting for a question, Tanajan, if I may ask you like a follow-up question from your reflection. Sometimes we can't go away from thinking, right? And often thinking reinforces a sense of self, right? That I'm this, or this is happening to me. Could you speak a little bit about how do we work with thinking in a way that doesn't strengthen our identity with self, but instead allows us the freedom of having a self-view?
Question. So yeah, well, first of all, here again, baseline is to recognize it. Is to recognize when we're, first of all, to understand what misheld self-view is. So that I like to like just using self-view. I mean, when I go through passport control, if they say, "Oh, welcome back to the United States, Craig," I don't say, "Oh, well, no, I have no self." No, we have a mundane, conventional self. But to recognize when we're thinking in ways or holding our view of who we are, holding an identity tightly as being real. So I've got two passports. I have one of those monk pouch things on my belt, and I've got my two passports in there. I leave them there so that I don't lose them, because I keep forgetting where I put them. So how's that for mindfulness? So conventionally speaking, and one is British passport and one is American passport. Now, I was born in America, and I'm a naturalized British citizen for 26 years. So, what am I? Am I American or am I British? And the answer is neither. In conventional reality, I'm both. But in ultimate reality, there's no such thing as Britain. There's no such thing as America. There's no such thing as human being. There's no such thing as passport, right? They're just creations. There's no essence of America. There's no essence of Britain. These are just made up things, and they're temporary. So it's when we cling to identity. So if I cling to being really American, if I cling to my American identity, then I'm really setting myself up for some suffering. Conversely, if I cling to being British, my British identity, if I just completely turn away and say, no, I may have been born there, but I'm British. I've lived in England on and off for 41 years now. I'm British. Or I even know I know an American man who he's lived in England about 25 years, and he very quickly adopted a very British accent. And yeah, very British. He was trying to wipe out his Americanness. And so to me, that's I wouldn't recommend things like that in terms of identity. So let me get back to your original question. Is that first and foremost, recognize when we're over-identifying. So if I'm at the airport, which I've been at a lot lately, and if somebody comes up and says, "Oh, are you a Buddhist monk?" I say, "Yeah." Right? But if I cling to that as a real solid monkness, there's no essence of monk. 23 years ago, if I'd been walking through the airport and they say, "Oh, you're that ballet teacher at English National Ballet," I say, "Yes." But a year later, if I'd gone through in white robes and I was an Anagarika, they say, "Are you an Anagarika?" Yes. So it's just holding identity lightly. But we need to, that's the mindfulness, that real mindfulness, and not to believe in it as who we truly are. You know, at who and what our essence, this unchanging essence. Buddha, you know, he used the five heaps, the five khandhas of form, feeling, perception, thoughts, feelings, you know, and sense consciousness, you know, as a way of looking at the human. But he said none of those are self, but he didn't say there was nothing. He just said body is not self, feeling is not self. He didn't say that there's just nothing there. There's something, but it's not what we think it is usually. So that's, anyway, long answer.
Thank you so much, Ajahn. And the reason I asked him the question is because, you know, in the arts and of course his previous life, the craft, there's a lot of self-identity. And I thought he would be so apt to be the one to answer this question, to put in the context, the practice. So this is really a rare opportunity for us to be interacting here with Ajahn. If any one of you have a question on your practice, please feel free to click on the raise hand button, and we'll invite you to unmute and interact with Ajahn.
I'll just make a small correction first, and then there is a question there, but I was not renowned.
Yes, you are.
Anyway, there's a question there.
That's, see, there's no identity. He's renowned. Google his previous name. Is there a question from anyone at all? I see that we have got new friends from the Philippines. Aldrin, I think you are joining us from the Philippines.
Oh, I see.
Welcome, Aldrin. Yes. Would you like to ask a question, Aldrin?
Good. Good day to everyone. So thank you for the warm welcome. So currently, I don't have any specific question. I just would like of course, to say thank you for this opportunity uh, for us to gather and learn the Dhamma, especially with Bante Ahimsako. That's all for now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Aldrin. Anyone else who's got a question? And this is really a moment to be speaking to an ex-accomplished ballerina. Sorry, I love to tease Ajahn out of respect. and so I shouldn't be saying this on screen, but I know this is going to be edited out. But I want to confess one thing in Ajahn. Every time I look at you, the first thing I look at is your toes, your feet.
Oh.
I looked at it and I said, you know, how do you stand in a V shape and with the pointed toes? Said, you have got very strong ankles.
I I don't have psychic abilities. I don't recollect past lives. I don't see future lives. But you know, often reflect on the different things that we as humans can identify with within this one lifespan. The different things we've been, different professions, different relationships, different things that we believed in, things that we want to be, and not that that's necessarily wrong to one level, but the suffering that can get caused around clinging to identity. So what does it say here? Bita, I'll let you read things out.
Yes, I'll help you. There are two questions here. One is from Malaysia, Woon Fong. Dear Ajahn, what is the best way to meditate on non-self?
Well, I can't say what's the best way. The way that I use is what I'm going to share, and that what I've shared and seem to have had some positive feedback about is reflecting on well, first of all, the Buddha's teaching on not self, especially the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, which is purported to be the second teaching that he offered the group of 5 ascetic friends of the Buddha. It's very simple, and it's beautifully simple. And it goes through this questioning format. The Buddha is asking, well, if it's not that, if it's not that, then is it worthy to call yourself? And to really it's a very simple teaching. You can read it in 10 minutes. You can memorize it in, half a day or whatever. And in your own language, or the language you feel most comfortable with. And to really reflect that, it's using these five heaps, these 5 khandhas. You've got body, feeling, tone, perceptions, thoughts, emotions, and then the sense consciousness. So it gives us a way to frame, okay, that's the basic constituents of a human being, a living being. To be able to, okay, body. So what part of this body is really, really, truly what I am? To really reflect as we meditate, settle, get the mind a little bit settled, heart settled, and then literally reflect on these teachings. And to go through slowly and just ask silently these questions. So what part of my body? So maybe, I remember seeing there was a dancer back in London. Sadly, he's passed away now. But he was, I think, born with no legs. Like really, it was just from pelvis down, like the lower pelvis down, nothing. And he was extraordinary. And he was in a company, what I saw him called Can Do Co. It was a mixed ability company, dance company. And he could run on his arms, on his hands. And he could like run up, people would kind of put themselves in, and he'd run up their back and hurdle himself off and turn around in the air and land in a wheelchair, and then he'd take off. Extraordinary. And then he became an actor. And so was he less of a human being than those on the stage that had legs? So was he less of what he was? He just didn't have legs. So I like to use these life experiences, like, well, what part, like if I lost my arms and legs, so yeah, life would change, of course. I would be really dependent on people. But if I lost, where is self? And if our body is changing, and they say every 7 or 8 years, all the molecules, cells changing, regenerating. Like where, I remember 60 years ago. I remember 20 years ago. So it's that just kind of picking, using the intellect, even, not overly complicated way, but in a creative way, just to reflect on. And also feelings. Well, like, if feeling tone is just pleasant, painful, or neutral, well, like, am I special because I feel pleasant feeling? Everybody, hopefully, at some point feels pleasant feeling. But we take things we make things personal, or we identify with, oh, I'm a happy person, I'm a joyful person, or we might label somebody else as saying, oh, they're such a happy person. I want to be like them, or oh, they're such a downer. They're really depressed, and so we sort of fix things. So I think I find just using like this, using the framework of the Buddhist teachings, just take these simple lists and really take an hour, take a day, take a week, take a retreat period, take a time to just really integrate it into your practice of reflecting on the aspects of our human existence where we have obstacles to our well-being.
Thank you, Thanajan. The next question is from a gentleman here, Jim. Dear Ajahn, if I heard you correctly, you mentioned, when I feel sad, that doesn't mean that I am suffering. Can you please elaborate on this statement? Thank you.
Yeah, and if I said it exactly like that, I need to make a small correction. Is it? Yeah, I don't necessarily need to suffer. So sadness itself is not suffering. Sadness is just an emotion. This is my understanding, and if I'm wrong, please let me know, seriously. But if it's sad in and of itself, that's just a human emotion. So if sometimes, because I find personally, and this is, sometimes in some of the translations of when it says the joy and the happiness and the bliss, which is true of all these positive things, but there are these other emotions as a human being. So of course we don't know what the Buddha felt. And you can't, we know what we read in the BuddhaDhamma Sutras, but we don't actually know what he felt, for instance, when certain things happened in his life. Right? But it seems, from what we're handed down, that he was still a feeling, sensing human being. And there were certain things where he responded, there was the time that he decided, and to set off from the Sangha because they weren't listening to him. There was a conflict in the group of people he was living with, and he was trying to help, and they really weren't listening to him. And so he left. He says he just packed up his golden robes and left. But we don't know what he felt. We don't know exactly. Was he just? It could have been equanimous. Well, he was surely equanimous. He was Buddha, but we don't know what he actually felt. But so there's a feeling. So if we see there's, I think a lot of us have probably had the privilege of meeting or being in the presence of people that are really, and potentially fully completed the path, like fully completed this path and realized this ultimate peace. I do believe that. But then if you see them laughing, so that's an emotion, right? Or if you see, I've seen somebody who is considered to be awakened, and have something explained to them very, very serious and sad, and you could see from their demeanor that they weren't laughing, like they were serious. So the mood, the tone changed. So there's still this feeling tone. This is the way I understand it. But what's not there is the clinging and the identification and the grasping and the suffering. So it's not making a problem out of sadness. So when we get sad news, like just 1 month ago, my mother died. It was sad. There was this, but there was very mixed emotions. So there was also relief for her because she'd been bedridden for 6 months, amputated leg, and she's never going to walk again. She's 95, and she's in pain and really uncomfortable. So there was also, it was mixed. It was really interesting from a meditator's point of view to go, oh wow, that's interesting. There was sort of that release for her, but the sadness of loss of somebody who'd been there 65 years of my life. So, but it's if we make a problem out of what we feel. So that's the way that's just hopefully a little bit of clarification, the way I practice that, and the way I understand it. And once again, if that's not right in terms of Dhamma, I'm very happy to be put straight. So.
Yes. Thank you, Ajahn. I think Alan's question has been answered. His question is it beneficial to reflect there is sadness rather than I am sad? I think you just answered that question.
I think that's a very good example of skillful use of thinking and language that change from I am to there is. That's very simple. So Alan, is that right, Alan? Thank you very much. That's very, very, very good point. Good question. Good. Because and even though we might not have realized not self, that to use that type of language internally also and externally, what I don't promote, and this is just a personal pet peeve, is that rare occasion when you ask somebody their name and they say, well, my birth certificate calls these 5 khandhas Bill, instead of just saying my name's Bill. So it's to not it's to hold conventional language lightly as well. We don't have to just never speak conventionally, because conventional language is so incredibly useful. It's very, very useful. But I think that's going back to that simple change of instead of I am, no, there is. This is sad, and then that here again, beautiful. And it's not only Lumpur Sumedho. This is no, sadness is like this. Full stop. And just what does sadness feel like? That's why really getting adept at noticing the being mindful of the body. Where in the body do I feel sad? Instead of going into the story. It's this circles back to it's that story, getting caught in the story of sadness. And saying, oh, wait, how long am I going to be sad? Or am I going to be sad when I find out such and such happens? It's that story and worry and machination and remembering and retelling the story over and over again is wherever the suffering is. So just be sad. Whoa, where do I feel sadness? The other day, it was weird. I was feeling this in the body. I was feeling anxiety, this mild anxiety, and I have no idea where it was coming from. But I could feel it, and that's sort of I usually tend to feel it in the torso. And I wasn't over caffeinated. I hadn't had any caffeine, but there was this feeling. I was like, oh, that's interesting, and I started to get into a story, and fortunately I caught myself. Sometimes I don't for quite a while. I caught myself. I was like, oh, no, just stay with the feeling. And then it was gone. It's like shining a light on I don't know if anybody has a garden where maybe, critters come in at night. Maybe you might think, oh, what kind of critter is that? You take your flashlight, go like that, and then the little eyes, disappear behind a tree. And sometimes with Dhamma practice, I find just shining the light of awareness, the light of mindfulness on maybe something that's unwanted, it just drops. Doesn't mean it doesn't come back. It's not gone forever necessarily, but it just kind of loses its power. So.
Mm-hmm. I think we're running out of time, but there is a question I thought maybe Ajahn could give a short answer for it. This is whereby there's a lot of discussion around the debate on self. So it is very difficult for someone who doesn't understand the topic or the subject of self to be able to explain it, to explain the concept of non-self to others. Can Ajahn just speak a little bit about how should one approach those discussions?
Yeah, this is where I had this experience in my early days of Dhamma practice. I was still a layman living in London and trying to explain the not self aspect of the sort of, we've got dukkha, anicca, anatta, the suffering, impermanence, and not self. And I would suggest that to not, first of all, not feel like we need to explain it to other people. Of course, if they ask us, also if we don't feel like we have enough of an understanding of it ourselves to talk about it, I suggest just saying, either not bringing it up if we're bringing it up, or if people ask us oftentimes, I'm like that with any topic. If I don't feel confident to say at least something that would be helpful, that I feel grounded in, I just say, yeah, I don't have that. I don't have that wisdom. It's a tough one. And what we don't want to do is lead somebody astray. But yeah, the way and here again, hopefully I'm not wrong, the way I often refer, it's like, there's no essence. There's no ahimsako, there's no essence of ahimsako right here. There's no essence of beta. We are processes. It's just this process of life, of coming into being, lingering, but it's constant. Everything is constantly on the move. But we need to penetrate that, really internalize that. If BuddhaDhamma was an intellectual alone, we need the intellect. You need to use the teachings, reflection, use the intellect to a good degree. But if it was only intellectual thing, then there would be so many arahants in the world. You get your arahant PhD from Bristol University or something. But it's the penetrating. It's where it's really, it's intuitive. That's my understanding. I'm on the project level. I'm working on this. So, but the way I talk about it, yeah, the not self is that there's no essence. So, yeah, I mean, if anybody asks, is that your body? I'll say yes. Right? So when you were feeling sad, was that your sad? Were you feeling sad? Yes, I was feeling sad. And go through all of the heaps. When you were thinking this, what do you think? Oh, well, I was at an 8-hour meeting yesterday, a trustees meeting. I had to share what I thought. But it's a process, and our thoughts to not solidify them, to not make them there is ahimsako-ness, or there's Craig Randolph-ness. There's no essence of Craig Randolph. There's no essence of ahimsako. Is that it's something that which is it's a cause. It was caused. It was born. It was conditioned. These conditions are flowing, constantly flowing, and that there's nothing solid there. It's being carried. Permanent essence. So that's the best way that I've found to talk about it, and I have had some positive feedback on that. That people did. So it's not saying that there's nothing.
Thank you so much, Thanajan. That's very skillful. I'm also reminded of time. We're now quite close to your meal time, and I think it would be time for us to call the session to a close, Thanajan. But before we do that, we'd like to invite Thanajan to lead us in the verses of sharing the aspiration. As we do this, we'd like to also offer this dedication to your late mother, who's recently passed away. We offer these merits, especially of this practice, to her and to you and to your family as well.
Yeah, thank you. And her name was Ginny. It's for Virginia. Ginny.
Virginia. Jeannie. So, our brothers and sisters, let us also take the opportunity to remember Madam Jeannie, the late mother of Ajahn Ahimsako, the previous great Randolph, for giving birth to him, for raising him, and to be a fine master that he is in front of us right now.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. I can't remember. Do you? Oh, yeah, you put the words up. Now let us chant the verses of sharing and aspiration through the goodness that arises from my practice. May my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life. May they soon attain the threefold bliss and realize the deathless through the goodness that arises from my practice. And through this act of sharing, may all desires and attachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind, until I realize Nibbana in every kind of birth. May I have an upright mind with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble guide. The Sangha is my supreme support. Through the goodness of all these, may the darkness and delusion be dispelled. Can I just make one point? And it's nitpicky, and I don't make a big deal out of it, but we have agreed here in the European monasteries to change one of the words there. And
Things.
you know this one.
Yes.
Yeah, so may all attachments quickly cease. We change to all cravings. And so, because when the elder that brought this up at one of our elders council meetings said, because it can be, he's met people that have been confused because there is such a thing as wholesome desire. So instead of all desires, it's may all cravings and attachments. It's a fine point, but I have to admit I agreed with it.
Yes. So. Thank you for the reminder. I'll change it. Yes, Longpa Munindo reminded me.
Oh, he did. Okay. Very good. Anyway, I'm feeling very glad and uplifted. And if I attach to that, then I'm going to suffer. So my job is to not attach to the joy that I'm getting from being with all of you today. But I've really appreciated practicing with you, and there was really good questions. And I wish you all well. And some of you I'll be seeing fairly soon here in Chithurst, and maybe I'll see the rest of you someplace in other parts of the world sometime. So.
When you come at the end of the year, Tanajan? When you are in this part of the world, when you are next in this part of the world.
Yeah, but also there's other parts of the world there. I see people from all sorts of places. So, yeah.
Right.
Okay, so
In closing, Ajahn now would like to pay respects and take leave by chanting the Araham. Would you like to lead us by paying respects to the Buddha, or we can chant the Araham?
I can pay the Buddha and
Okay, thank you.
Araham Sama Sambuddho Bhagavan Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Swagato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Okay.
Thank you very much, Ajahn.
Thank you all very much. Yeah, and take care of yourselves.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye bye, everyone.